Hi guys, and welcome to my review of the TRN MT3. This is the latest, let's say, more budget orientated single DD from TRN, and a continuation of what was started with the MT1. Anyway, the package is a really simple one, nothing nothing special, let's put it that way. A little bit of a departure from the usual TRN packaging, but nonetheless it is what it is. Brings the usual assortment of tips that TRN usually provides, and a cable that is also a cable that's been seen before in a few other models. TA1 Max, if I'm not mistaken, brings the same cable. Anyway, it's a basic package, like I said, nothing really too spectacular, but I guess it's in tune with the price. And talking about price, I unfortunately cannot give you a value because I'm not sure what the value will be, but if I consider the current market and the available options from other brands and TRN themselves, I would say that the MT3 will be priced anywhere between $25 and $30 at the absolute maximum. I don't think it will be costing more than that. Anyway, on to the IM itself. I'm obviously not using the stock cable, as you can see. All metal construction, and the shell, when you look at it, which is, by the way, very beautifully done, it immediately reminded me of another shell of another IM, and of course I knew exactly what I was talking about, and here is the IM in question. Is the Shiminli from TANGZU, and as you can see, very similar kind of faceplate design. The Shiminli is a little bit thicker. Both are metal, obviously. It's got a little bit of an ear lobe assistance here to actually make it sit a little nicer and hold on nicer. But overall, the shells, they look very similar. This has got a hexagon pattern. This has got more like a triangular pattern on the faceplate. But it begs the question: did perhaps TRN like the look of the TANGZU and decided to make something similar in the hope that that would be a selling point? Is perhaps the TRN, who knows, made by TANGZU? I don't know. There's always so many questions that are kind of left unanswered. But anyway, the shells really nice. They've got a nice weight to them. They fit in my ears perfectly well. I didn't have any issues with it. Although, funny enough, I did find that the tip, well, tips are always important and always a major contributor to making or breaking an IM. But I actually found that although it fit nicely, I actually found that the tip was giving me a little bit more of a tough time to choose adequately than what I was expecting. But anyway, I eventually got through that, and as I say, the shell is a nice design, a complete departure from the original MT1, which was an all plastic shell, and apparently as well the driver is a newer driver, an upgraded version of the original MT1. Actually, here's the MT1 just for you guys to see. There we go. Okay. So the original MT1 had a chunkier shell, but it actually fit very nicely, very nicely. I was one of those people that actually enjoyed the MT1. The MT1 came out at the same time as more or less at the same time as the EDX, and it was where the EDX was more of a bass monster with more emphasis on the bass. This was more mid focused, and I actually enjoyed the MT1 thoroughly, and on top of enjoying it, it was one of the IMs that I actually got some very satisfactory results from modifying, and modified. It's well, actually in a few minutes when I'll show you graphs, you'll see what I mean. I've got several modified in different ways, but this is probably one of the ones that I that I enjoyed, the mod that I did on it the most. And I can tell you that well, you can pick the MT1 up now for like $5 or $6, and you do this mod that I'm talking about on the MT1, if you have it, and it will easily keep up with IEMs costing 50, 60, $70. That's that's um, that's the truth, plain and simple. The driver is a driver that responds well to being modified, and although this is not a mod for a beginner to do, it's also not a tremendously hard mod to execute. And I honestly think that if you do have an MT1, this is what I've done here is something that is definitely worthwhile considering. It's a mod. Let me put it to you this way: the same way as I modded the Blonde 03 a few months ago and created the Bloxygen, and that completely I mean, at the time I even said that would have been the perfect new Blonde to make, instead of all of the attempts that they've been making lately, which are mediocre at best. The MT1 modified with the way I've done it here, that would have been perfect. This would have been a killer IEM. This could have been, if executed the way it is, yeah, it could have been what the 7 Hertz Zero became, what the Moondrop True became, which were well-tuned IEMs at an ultra budget price. Anyway, enough of ranting and talking about stuff that is probably not really important. Anyway, that's my modified one. As I was saying, the MT1 started life with this plastic shell. It had a decent enough sound. It wasn't a sound that offended me, at least. Peaks at 2 and at 4.5k, and then with a few more peaks further down the line. It was dubbed typical of that period of time back in 2020 when it came out, of being the double horn kind of tuning. It then was later substituted by the or not substituted but joined by the MT1 Pro, which kind of had this EDX Pro look to it, this KZ EDX Pro look to it, and in essence it was basically the same thing. The driver was the same. You know, they didn't change much. It kind of just remained the same thing, just a little bit of improved in the finishing of the faceplate and of the nozzle, but the sound was the same. And again, it wasn't an offensive sound. It was fine. It sounded good, you know, and for the price you couldn't really complain too much. The MT3 excuse me, the MT3 is a complete departure from that initial signature, that initial sound. It is an IEM which kind of is following the same philosophy as KZ has been following lately, which is, you can see that some care was taken in wanting to tune this properly. And yes, it's got a very well executed bass, in my opinion. Ample sub bass, transitioning perfectly into the mid bass. That transition then into the mid is also very well done. And then it's got a very gradual pinna gain, instead of the peaks at 2 to 3k, which is usually the area where most are tuned. You know, it has a very gradual ascension into the highs, into the presence area, and it peaks at around just over 5k, 6k more or less. That's where it finally peaks. Is it good? Is it bad? Well, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and I guess it will be very much dependent on your library. Yes, it does make things very in your face, in my opinion, you know. But it also conveys a very nice, open, detailed kind of sound. Is that detail perhaps realistic or timbre correct? I would say no. Obviously, it's colored, but it's not offensive. It only becomes offensive when you crank the volume. When you crank the volume, then you start seeing that way that the signature was done and emphasized at that area there can become a little bit harsh and a little bit too much, and you know. Perhaps fatiguing. Obviously, using foam tips do help, and I used some T400s, and that kind of helped tame down that brightness, harshness, or whatever you want to call it, and you know, made the sound or made hearing to the MT3 for a longer period of time, less fatiguing. Overall, like I was saying, the sound is pleasant. It's a way more detailed sound than what the MT1 was, or the MT1 Pro was. A way more detailed sound. It kind of has some hints of the sound of the CCA Lyra. The only difference being, or the biggest difference being, that the balance between the bass and the mids and the highs in the Lyra has been done in such a way that you feel more the bass. While over here, although graphically it's got the same amount of bass as the Lyra, because of the way that balance has been done between the three main frequency ranges, you feel that this one is more, it's more, well, more in your face. Let me just put it that way. Okay. Technically wise, yes, lots of ability to be quite detailed with, picking up all little details and micro details in a very adequate manner. I guess also the fact that it's a metal shell does contribute to that ability to be more detailed. Usually when it's a resin shell, it introduces different resonances internally, which will obviously affect that ability. And I'm talking, of course, of a single DD IEM. This situation also happens with planars, and for example, if some of you saw my review recently of the Stellaris, the fact that the Stellaris has a metal shell has contributed to the sound being in a slightly different manner than what it is, for example, in the Muse Power Hi-Fi, which I'm sure is using the same driver, and in the TRN Kirin, which again is using the same kind of driver. Anyway, what do I have here in front of me to kind of position the MT3 and to see whether the MT3 is a worthwhile IEM to acquire or not? Well, very simple. I'm going to go perhaps with the first ones that I would say are excluded from well, not excluded, but the MT3 will be superior to, with all its minor flaws that it has. The MT3 is superior to the KB Eros Finch. The KB Eros Finch is it's just all about bass, and if at least it was a well executed bass, it was a bass that was really truly fun, it wouldn't be fatiguing after a while. But no, it's a bass which becomes extremely boomy, and even look, let's take songs like Papa Was Rolling Stone from Less Written Why. It's a song that you need to have some mids to be able to notice the percussion and the trumpets and all the brass instruments and and even the voice and so on and so forth. And on the Rose Finch, the amount of bass that it has is so much it just muffles things down. Yes, on the plus side, having so much bass can counteract some signs of sibilance that can occur sometimes. But in the case of the Rose Finch, that is not even a situation that occurs, because the way that it was tuned, it's very mellow in that part of the spectrum. So the 4, 5, 6 K area, it isn't prone to sibilance anyway. But it is what it is. So I would say the Rose Finch is not an adequate contender to in any way challenge the MT3. Okay, the next one is the TANGZU Shiminli. Like I showed you just a few minutes ago, a very similar shell, and the sound is it's a pleasant sound. I didn't enjoy the peak that it had, in its original stock tuning, because when you scale it, when you increase the volume, it jumps at you. But if you keep things within, let's say, normal listening levels, it's fine. The thing that kind of is the biggest letdown on the Shiminli, I would say, is the fact that the sound sounds closed. The sound doesn't have that air and that space that I would ideally like myself. Of course, when compared to the MT3, yes, the MT3, because of the way that it's been tuned and that energy that it has, that part of the spectrum, it conveys you a bigger sense of air, of 3D, of even of soundstage even. far superior to the Shiminli in that aspect. With regards to the bass, it's very much a give and take here and there, and then like I said, mids again, they kind of they trade blows. Overall I still think the MT3 is a superior IEM again to the Shiminli, as the Shiminli comes in its stock format. Okay, then we have the KZ Brotherhood over here, EDA balanced, EDX Ultra, and Lyra. I think these are sufficient to kind of position well, because they show different upgrades in the tuning from KZ. The balanced, the name says it all, was the first one to really shine after the original TCA CRA, let's put it that way, and it's got an amazing sound, really good sound. The bass, it's got the main thing I think that all of these three here have as compared to the MT3 is a very nice tonality with all the flaws that they can have, and you know, tonality on these is very nice. Nice tonality, warm. It's really good on the EDA balanced. The Ultra just adds a little bit more extension up top, so you get a little bit more detail, you get a little bit more sense of space. Again, you know, really nothing much more than I can point as a negative. And then the Lyra, they brought down the bass slightly, maintained the highs, or even increased a little bit more the highs to a certain extent, and the mids are also a little bit more energetic. So you have, let's say, although this is the balanced by name, I would say that this is the more relaxed. This one has got a little bit more treble added onto the already relaxed signature of this one, and this one then just adds more vocals, so more mids, reduces the bass slightly, but overall comes out as the more brighter one. So darker, intermediate, brighter. Let's put it in that way. Compared to the MT3, the fact that I don't know the price 100% of the MT3 is a deterrent. The fact that this does have a metal shell is a positive for it. But overall, any one of the KZs, you cannot go wrong with them, and I think that as they are compared to the MT3, they are a valid choice. So if you have any one of these KZs, the MT3 is not going to bring anything new to the picture. It's not going to be superior in any way to these KZs. So if you have them, just stick with them. You'll be fine. You'll be happy. You won't regret not getting the MT3. Finally, I thought it made sense to kind of just position the MT3 compared to, well, an oldie, a new collaboration from HBB, which was to a certain point unexpected due to the brand that he collaborated with, and let's say the one of the market references is if what you want is a detailed sound, okay, and again, all of them priced within more or less of this $20 to $30 bracket. I mean, the EDA balanced is a little bit cheaper, but all of them here are priced within that. The Shiminli is a little bit more expensive, $35. The Rose Finch was also a little bit more expensive, though they crossed the $30 barrier, but all of them here are up to the $30 barrier. Okay, starting with the blonde. You have a blonde, stick with the blonde. It's better than the MT3, period. There's really not much more than I can say. Tonality, mids, blonde is better. It's as simple as that. And if you are then in any way technically inclined and want to do that Bloxygen mod on this, you're going to create a monster. You're going to create an IEM that, in my opinion, keeps up very well with an Olina, for example. And by saying that, I'm not taking anything away from the Olina. I mean, the Olina is the reference at $100 for a single DD, beating even IEMs way more expensive than that in single DD fashion. And this modified becomes on that level. It gets to that level. Okay, so if you have a blonde, keep the blonde. Forget the MT3. No need to go spend money on it. Okay, that's it. That's out of the way there. Compared to the Zero. The Zero is all about detail. It's all about detail, all about correctness of the sound. And in that aspect, yes, far superior to the MT3. Way superior to the MT3. There's no possible comparison. Where does this lose to that? In the fun factor, where that will be quite engaging and quite fun if you start listening to some EDM and some more, let's say, bass, not bass heavy, but bass bass filled genres of music, and will do it very well in the MT3. This, you start noticing that thinness of the bass that they has. It's not bad, because that was the whole premise of the tune behind the Zero. The Zero was supposed to have a neutrally correct sound, and it was very well obtained, and it was perfect. It's a really good IM. It does what it's supposed to do really well, but like I said, the fun department, it lags behind the MT3. So, it's not one is better than the other. It's what are you wanting, what are you pretending. If you have this, does it make sense to buy that? Perhaps not, because if you bought this, you wanted more precision in the sound, more accurateness in the sound. So why would you go buy the MT3? If you don't have an IM and you're wanting something fun, but that can equally be, decently detailed, decently capable, then the MT3 obviously is a viable option. So that's that out of the way. As compared to the QKZ, the HBB Zeus version, what do I think? I think that the QKZ is better. Simple. It's not perfect, and I'll be doing a review on it. So I don't want to talk too much about it, but I will say this: the tuning it's a tuning which is bass heavy, but it's not that it has monstrous amounts of bass, because when I actually graph it compared to the KZs over here, it's basically the same thing. It's just the energy in the above 1K area that's been slightly subdued, and so it gives you a sense of a darker sounding IM, one which is more emphasized on the bass. That's the only thing really. But overall, how is the sound of the Zeus HBB? Very nice. It's a very pleasant sound. It's not the most detailed sound, no, it isn't. But it's clean, it's detailed, it's got decent speed, a very nice texture in the bass, and above all, for me at least, that's what was the standout of it, is the texture of the tonality and the timbre. This kind of reminded me of a slightly darker sounding 03. Okay, the 03 does have a little bit more energy than that there. So yes, you could say that the Zeus HBB is a modern day 03. Let's put it that way. Let's consider it that way. And compared to the MT3, in my opinion, I would say yes, a better choice, a wiser choice. It's equally as fun, but also capable to give you a detailed sound with ample technical capabilities, although that's not its main focus. Anyway, guys, that's basically my review on the MT3. I think that if you do not have anything, if you haven't bought anything in this segment, it's obviously going to be a very difficult choice, because there's so many things. We are so overwhelmed with so many IMs every single day, every single week, that it's very difficult to say this, that's a good choice, that isn't a good choice. But I think I kind of made it very clear that if you're looking for fun signatures, well executed, that can satisfy a wide genre of music, the KZs and the CCA are definitely an option. The HBB Zeus, definitely an option, and of course the MT3 the MT3 of course also an option. So it's down to what you taste, what do you like, what are you what do you prefer. If you want a more detailed sound, if you're more into the correctness, into the neutrality of sound and so on and so forth, then the Zero is the one to go for. If you own any of or some of them, if you already have a KZ, if you already have a Blonde, if you have a Zero, well, if you have them, then it doesn't really make sense you go get the MT3, because it's not going to give you anything that those ones are not capable of doing. So it is what it is. Anyway, guys, as always, like and subscribe. Any questions that you might have, sorry, please don't hesitate to ask. And yeah, I'll show you quickly the graphs next, and that's that. All right, take care. Thank you. Bye bye. Hi guys, and welcome to the graph section of the TRN MT3. This is the stock graph of the MT3. Channel balance between them is almost perfect. I saw a little minor 1 dB, if that, difference over here, and that's in this part of the spectrum. But otherwise, they matched each other. The left and right channel matched almost perfection. I have two sets. I graphed the second set and the same thing, so I'm going to assume that there was some care taken in the QC. This is, like I said, the graph of the MT3. Nice sub bass, smooth transition into the mid bass and into the mid. So by 200 hertz, it's almost flat already. So no real bleed. Very, very gradual transition or gain in the pinna gain area. Instead of peaking at 2 or 3K between this area, which is what usually is done, it's done very gradually, very smoothly. And it's peaking like 5.5, 6K, let's put it that way. That's where it peaks. What does what does this mean? It means that there's no real sibilance or anything of the sort like that, but it's just very, very on the edge, especially when you start increasing the volume, like I mentioned. At lower volumes or at middle volume, it's fine. It's only when you start increasing volume that I found that it could get a little bit too much, could become a little bit fatiguing, and also obviously the source that you use will be very much something that will influence that. If you use the foam tips bring this down slightly and just change the profile here and just make overall the things sound a little bit different, better or worse. Well, you try it out and you decide for yourself. Anyway, this is the MT3 compared to the original MT1. MT1. Here we go. Compared to the original MT1, this is the graph of the MT1. Peak at just over 2K, then at just about 4, and then you can see for yourselves. Completely different. I mean, the MT3 is being tuned in a much nicer way. Bass is very similar, but bass was not a problem in the MT1 already, in my opinion. But it's this area, the way it's just been handled, that it's much more pleasant. Compared to some of the KZ and CCA offerings, like I mentioned, the first one I'm going to compare it to, and one that I think was the one that probably reminded me the most of the MT3, it's the CCA Lyra. And you can see a lot of, although yes, there are of course differences, you can see there's differences, but overall the sound of one and the other is very similar in this whole top end area. The difference is that you see or you feel more the bass of the Lyra as compared to the bass of the MT3. I don't think it's me. I think it's genuine like that. Anyway, compared to the balanced version, here's the KZ balance. You notice that definitely the balance has got less detail abilities than the MT3, and the graph is showing that quite well. But it's got the same bass, and it just conveys an overall, let's say, warmness to the sound. The tonality, the timbre, it's very pleasant in the EDA. This one here, 19, is the EDX Ultra, exactly. Let me just change the color so you guys can actually just see better. The Ultra basically follows on the EDA's footsteps. It's just tones down that 5K peak there, and then gives it a bit more extension up top. So it's like I said, it's just a little bit. It's an improvement over the balanced, in my opinion. And then oh yeah, okay. Here's the the QKZ HBB Zeus, loads of bass, as you can see, but I think this is more of a product of the fact that this area has been nicely subdued, and so it just sounds darker. Obviously not as detailed because this amount of bass just completely overpowers the mids and highs as compared to the MT3. But I would still think that the QKZ, the HBB Zeus is probably going to be a more satisfying IEM in that I can see more people handling perhaps the warmness of the bass here as compared to people that will be able to accept the brightness. I could be wrong, but it's just my opinion. I mean, I can't really say. This is going to be very much dependent on what you actually like. Honestly, I'm not going to say that one is better than the other. Personally, I would prefer the HBB because it just reminds me more of the Blonde 03's kind of sound, and I would go for the HBB version. What else do I have here? Compared to the Shiminli, which I also mentioned, again similar in kind of in the bass and so on and so forth, but this way that it was done here, and this early pinna gain, and then the way it just, I don't know, there's something in this area here of the sound that I just didn't enjoy. And although it doesn't graphically show it, I just found this whole area, this whole part here of the 3, 4, 5K even, just I don't know, it just jumps at me too much. I could be just just my impression, but it's graphically, what I hear is one thing, what I graphically see is something which is not exactly 100%. This, I think it's the relation between these two areas here, between the mids, and when they transition to the upper mids, this relationship, yeah, this is just something that's off there. Yeah, that's basically it. I've showed you all the graphs. Oh, just for the sake of comparison, my TRN MT1 modified version is this graph here, and bass the same as the MT3. The way it rises as well, the pinna gain, it peaks at about 3.5 and then drops off very nicely with then some energy past 10k as well. This is exactly, I mean, just for you guys to understand, this that you see here is the same driver as the stock MT1. So, and in the stock MT1, this is what you have. So it's not that the driver is bad. No, the driver is pretty good, and the fact that I've been able to tune it the way I've done is a testament to that. The driver is a decent driver. It is a decent driver. That's it. Anyway, guys, enough of this. I hope you guys enjoyed my review as always. I try and do my very best, as you guys know. And that's it. If you have any questions, please ask away. I'll do my best to reply as I usually do. And I'll see you in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.